Yes, that's right. It's Joe here live for Joyrider TV, back with some more Q&A, going out live on a Friday, the 29th of August is the date. Yes, as we're absolutely flying through the summer season at a rate of knots that could get on the speed stick. Yes, we've got some very interesting pre-loaded questions in this edition of the live Q&A. But if you're lucky enough to be watching live, then of course, please do shoot me any questions that you have in the live chat. So I'm just going to steam straight in with today's lead question, which is about how we can tame the single-handed spinnaker boat, spinnaker catamaran. So the question was actually about the Shadow, which is, I believe the Shadow is a 16-foot boat, most similar to the one that's featured often on Joyrider TV would be the FX1, of course. So we're talking about the single-handed, basically like a single-handed version of an F18, which might be a single-handed F16, because with the F16 class, you can sail equally single-handed, mainsail and spinnaker only, equally with the double-handed boats. The FX1, of course, a good option, a good example. And then the Shadow, which is like the single-handed version of the Spitfire, which is a lightweight 16-foot boat, very similar to an F16, but I believe the dimensions don't quite measure to make it into the F16 class. So if we were to be going out sailing and it was going to be windy, what would we do to take a bit of the sting out of the tail of a boat like this? By the way, this question was raised by Percival Bernard 787, and we were going to talk about it last week, but we got distracted. Apologies. Yeah, so the first thing would be, what would the first thing be? On the land, before you go sailing, there are things that can be done which makes the boat a bit more manageable. And all of this can be applied to other, what I would call tight-rigged catamarans. Two types of catamaran, tight-rigged and loose-rigged. The difference is a tight-rigged catamaran, we sail with a very tight rig, so it makes the whole rig a lot flatter as it goes tighter, as a whole kind of thing. So that would be like on an F18 or a Tornado, or on a Shadow X or an FX1. The other type would be a loose rigged catamaran, which would be like a Dart 18 or a Hobie 16, where if we loosen the rig, that's going to help us to lose power, because we're allowing the rig to fall backwards more and to leeward more. So we're spilling power that way, because on those boats, we don't have such a sophisticated means of losing power. So if we did want to depower, like if we were going for a full day sailing and we were setting the boat up for it and we knew it was going to be windy, first thing we can do is we can rake the rig back more. So the most similar profile that we have at this time is this one. So we could, so raking the rig back more means that we're angling the rig more towards the back of the boat. The more upright the rig is, the more powered we're making the boat, because we're bringing the rig higher up. We're putting more load towards the front of the center of lateral resistance. We're certainly loading up the front of the boat more. Whereas if we want the boat to be as easy to sail as possible in a strong wind, bringing the rig back more is going to make it easier. You may ask, how much would you bring the rig back more? I would say going down, or on a boat like the ones we're talking about, we would have a stay adjuster. Have I got one here? No. A stay adjuster like this with the holes in it. On the forestay, like that would be here. And I would say the most we want to adjust that by is either 1 or 2 holes. So if your normal setting is with the forestay going into this one, then if we moved that up to the next one, or even to the next one still, then what that would do is bring the mast back more, which is going to help to take some of that power off the rig and make the boat more forgiving, less likely to stick the nose in, and generally easier to sail in the stronger wind. There is a little bit of what would you call it, like trial and error experimentation required to find out what is the sweet spot if you are adjusting the mast rake on the boat. Because if you rake the mast back too much, what we're doing is we're moving the center of effort of the rig back too much. This is quite an exaggeration, which, like, so if the center of effort is here and it's a long way behind the center of lateral resistance, the centerboard, then what that is going to do is it's going to try to make the boat turn up into the wind all of the time, which might make your rudders feel quite heavy. As well as that, putting the rig further back is going to put, as you would expect, more weight on the rudders generally as well. So if you've raked your rig back more, you've gone out sailing, you've gone, oh, rudders are really heavy, you put it back too much. So there will be a little bit of trial and error involved there. The other thing you can do to help, if we are looking for performance out of the boat, rather than just we've got to get home, you know, we've sailed to another island and the wind has increased significantly and we just want to get home, then these sort of changes may be not worth doing while your boat's on the beach and you're preparing to set off to come home. Like the next one, putting more rig tension on the boat. This is what you would want to do if you're going to be really looking for performance in the heavy wind and you're looking to get as much speed out of the boat around a course as possible, especially upwind sailing. Having more rig tension on is going to flatten off the whole rig, which is going to make the boat much more efficient in a heavy wind, especially upwind. So that's more efficient. But is it going to help you lose power? Yes, because it's going to be flatter, but you're only going to notice that effect if you are sailing the boat to its full capabilities, which means sailing with the jib absolutely cranked in on the upwind. So you've got a really flat jib. I know we talk about single-handers, but there is an overlap here. And having the mainsail cranked in tight as well. So that would be the first 2 setup items. The third setup item we could do is the diamond wires on the mast. If we increase the tension in the diamond wires, so I'm not going to go into too much detail here. We've gone into this detail before, but if you are normally sailing with your diamond wires at, for example, about 35 on the loose gauge, the tension, increase that to 38, maybe even 40. That's going to put more bend into the mast. What that's going to help you to do is to flatten the sail more, and it's going to make it easier to put more downhaul on, which is going to help to flatten the sail. So more diamond wires. In fact, if it was me and I had my boat set up nicely, so I really like the way that it feels, the only one that I would change would be the diamond wire tension, and increasing it by about 3 or 4 on the loose gauge would be the right amount to, as a range, to go from heavy wind to like let's call it going from trying to lose power to trying to power up as much as possible. So powering up about 35, losing power 38 to 40, that kind of range. There we go. The other thing that we can change on the beach before we go sailing is, if you've got the facility to do so, you can change the top 3 battens or just 2 battens in the mainsail. Our mainsail has got a strange shape here, but for most sailing conditions, like especially when you're looking for power, you're going to have a softer batten in the top. Now, with a softer batten, let's think this is the softer batten. When we push down on it, it bends really easily because it's soft. So that bend is going to put more curve into the sail, more power, and which is going to make your boat faster when you're in those conditions looking for more power. But when it's windy, you don't want all that shape at the top. So much better, if you've got the facility to do so, is to put in a stiffer batten which doesn't bend as easily, or 2 stiffer battens in the top that don't bend as easily, because then what that means is when you tension those battens, the top of the sail is going to sit much flatter, which is really going to help to depower your sail. So those are some setup points. So then when we get out sailing, what we can do to make the boat easier to manage: upwind first. So upwind first with your mainsail. What you could do is definitely crank the downhaul on as much as you can, and then a little bit more. If you think that your downhaul's on maximum, there's a fair chance that it's not. So pull it harder. Like really wind that bad boy on. The more downhaul you put on, that is going to, I'll put the mast back, stole the mast. As we put more downhaul on, not only is it going to flatten the sail, which is going to make the boat much faster upwind, and it's having a flatter sail means that the power that we have isn't going to be working to lift the hull, but instead it's going to bring the center of effort down and forwards. So it's going to put it more here. So if we look at the profile of the sail, it's going to go from, where should we put this up here? Kind of like a general curve like that, which we'd have with less downhaul on. And then as we downhaul it more, if this is the mast end, the curve in the sail is going to be further forwards, and then the back part of the sail is going to be flat. So if you think about the way that the sail is pulling the boat, when we've got curve like this, it's really pulling quite generally. But if we think that the pull of the sail is perpendicular to the shape, then it's going to be kind of pulling there, which is trying to make the boat that is going to be pulling the boat more forwards, making the boat faster upwind. So when the majority of the curve is forwards, and of course, by having the center of effort lower down in the sail, it means that the boat is going to effectively be less kind of top heavy. Like if we've got loads of curve in the top of the sail, that means you've got loads of leverage in the top trying to make you fly a hull. And then, as we know, flying a hull looks tremendously cool, but is it fast? Not when you keep having to sheet out or pinch up into the wind to put the hull down. So if we can stop the hull from flying really high by winding on the downhaul, that is always going to be more efficient. We can also pull the mast rotation in more. So if we have the rig as a whole, if our mast in our kind of lighter wind setting, mast rotation pointing at the shroud, then it means even if we've got a load of downhaul on, it's an exaggeration, but the whole rig, the mast and the sail combination, is going to have a load of curve in it. Whereas if we bring the mast more in line with the sail, then the whole rig is going to be much flatter. And again, this flatter rig is going to be much easier to deal with in a stronger wind. Okay, so what else can we do to make the boat, let's say, easier to sail when it's windy? A big one is we can lift the dagger boards. Like on a boat like the FX1, I'm not sure about the shadow, but if we put the dagger boards up so they're about this much above the deck, what that does is, again, it's another means of stopping the boat wanting to fly the hull every time you get a gust of wind. Yes, the hull is still going to fly, but by having, if you think underneath the boat is kind of pivoting off that dagger board. If we bring that higher up, then it's not going to have as much leverage trying to get the boat to fly the hull. But as well as that, when it's windy, we should be sailing faster, and we're getting enough lift from the dagger boards without needing to have them all the way down. So if we don't need them all the way down, all that we're doing by having them all the way down, as well as making the boat want to lift the hull a lot more frequently, is we're creating more drag. So lift the dagger boards when it's windy. If you were going to do one thing differently, I would say lift the dagger boards and everything will feel so much easier. There we go. And then, yeah, so the last thing we can look at is our body weight position on the boat. And this will come with a little bit of experimenting to find the sweet spot on the particular boat that you're sailing. But, traditionally, when we're sailing upwind, we're getting quite far forwards to really dig the bows to have the boat sort of flat, but really making sure that the bows are in. But as it gets windier, you might feel that if you step back a little bit so that you're trapezing further back than the so if the shrouds and the dagger boards are kind of here, if we're trapezing a bit further back, then we're kind of trimming the what would you call it, the pitch of the boat to be most efficient for those conditions. And where you want to feel whether your body weight is in the right spot is in the amount of weight in the rudders. So if you feel that the rudders aren't really gripping particularly well, or perhaps they feel a bit heavy, but and the steering just doesn't feel very nice, it might be that you're too far forwards on the boat. So just try coming back slightly, and that might help significantly. Okay. On the downwind, if you're feeling it's a bit breezy on a single-handed boat, it is in a strong wind, it is a real commitment to put the spinnaker up, because putting the spinnaker up on a single-handed boat is much easier than bringing the spinnaker down. So what sort of my thought process is before I'm kind of like, if you're sailing around a course, before I've got to the point where, all right, windward mark, turning downwind, definitely putting the spinnaker up. If it was in a race and the boat in front put the spinnaker up, yeah, I'm going to put it up. But if it wasn't a race and we've turned downwind, what I would do before automatically putting it up would be just to think on the downwind point of sail, is this extremely exciting without the spinnaker up on a regular catamaran sailor's broad reach? So that is with the apparent wind coming across the boat at 90 degrees. If with the apparent wind at 90 degrees, you're thinking, woohoo, watch out, we've got a bit on here, then it's probably a good idea not to put the spinnaker up. But if you're going downwind and you're thinking, yeah, we could do more, then put it up. So that would be the way to decide on whether to put the spinnaker up. And then, even though it is the same regardless of wind strength, when it's a strong wind, it's even more important that at no time you have the spinnaker sheeted in too much. If it's sheeted in too much, what that is going to do is it's going to stall the airflow over your whole rig and slow the boat down significantly. And the way that we're coping with the power is on the downwind especially, is by going fast. If we're sailing downwind and we're managing to get the boat at like 17, 18 knots and the wind strength is 25, then this scientifically, this probably doesn't add up, but a way to understand it, I think it does. So that means you've got 7 knots of pressure that are actively trying to knock you over, which, you know, we can deal with that 7 knots. Whereas if you've got the spinnaker oversheeted, what's going to happen is you're going to lose boat speed. Maybe you'll drop down to 14 knots, which means you've got over 10 knots of wind trying to knock you down. So the faster you can go downwind, not by massively heading up and going for speed, but by making sure you're not oversheeted, that is what is going to help the most on the downwind. But when it comes to dropping the spinnaker, then good luck. I think that is the main thing. If you're single-handed, I do find sitting on the tiller extension is a good plan, just to keep the boat going the right way. And yeah, I think what I would generally do is pull the spinnaker down until you've got it in the chute enough so that it's not gonna, it definitely isn't gonna fall back out or fall in the water, and then adjust your course again if you need to, because when you're sitting on the tiller extension, the chance of it not quite being in the right spot is significant. So pull it down as fast as you can till the spinnaker's safe, then adjust your course very quickly, then pull it in the rest of the way, and then off we go. Okay. And, you know, I think just to finish the story of the dagger boards, this goes for all dagger board boats. On the downwind, how do you know how much dagger board is the right amount? It depends on how readily, how quick the boat is to fly the hull. If every single gust that you get, the boat is jumping out of the water and it seems a bit erratic, like the boat is almost trying to throw you off because like gust, hull goes up, and or if you're feeling really overpowered downwind, by lifting the dagger boards again, same as on the upwind, the boat is going to react a bit slower We're going to have less drag from having too much dagger boards, and it's just going to be easier to sail. Whereas if there's a decent amount of wind, and even in the gusts, the boat doesn't seem to want to fly the hull, then perhaps you've got them lifted a bit too high and you need to put them down lower. So there we go. I think that is a flying start to this week's Q&A. Thank you very much for coming. Did we really just talk about that for 25 minutes? I think we did. All right, checking in with everybody who's checking in the live chat. We've got Chris in Texas, who I run my F18 uni rig in a big wind and it's a blast. Yeah, leave the jib at home and you don't need it. Yeah, very nice. All right, we've got Tom on board. Now, Tom says wind a bit unstable and the boat feels nervous on the rudder. Tips to work together for max speed. We want to be the fastest F16 on the speed stick. Oh, yes. This is a great ambition. Yeah, I'd say a lot of what we were just talking about is really going to apply there. I think this sort of dagger board depth and just experiment with how much dagger board you've got in. And, you know, when you go out for a sail, you are, of course, going to be sailing in conditions which are similar for a period of time. So during that period, perhaps take a marker pen out with you so that you can mark your dagger boards and just find where it is that you feel the boat is feeling a bit less nervous, a bit less twitchy. But with a boat like an F16, very much the same on the Tornado or on the F18, is when you are two sail reaching in a strong wind, it really does, you know, these high aspect rudders become very, very twitchy indeed. And it's just the nature of the beast. And you just have to work on how to not steer. So less steering, more sheet, and that is what's going to help, I think. Yeah, and for the kind of two sail, like main and jib speed run on a boat like this, then the biggest thing that we can change is going to be the shape of our mainsail. Do we want it in this upwind shape, or do we want it to have a bit more of a curve in it for more drive? I think you can only answer that by feeling, does it feel like the boat is flying? No, this is not a very good explanation, actually. Yeah, I would generally, if I was going to send it on a two sail reach on a tight rigged catamaran, I would set the mast rotation back at the shroud, perhaps ease off a little bit of downhaul to put a bit more curve into the sail, because what we're trying to do is get the boat starting off on a beam reach like this. And as we get more wind or more speed, we're going to ease the main sheet when the hull lifts. And we're just looking to transfer that energy that is working to lift the hull into more speed by taking the boat deeper. And the more curve we've got in the mainsail, the deeper we're going to be able to take the boat and keep that power going. So very much like on the fast windsurfers, like the ones doing the speed sailing, dump the outhaul, get loads of curve, and that means you can sail deeper downwind. There we go. That is what I believe on that topic. I look forward to seeing your submissions on the speed stick there, Tom. Good luck to you. Okay, Jochen, channel member. Nice to have you with us. Jochen is on board. He says, today I promised not to ask a question where you'll have to draw a sketch and to perform research whilst streaming live. Okay, thanks very much for that. I can't even remember what that was about, but I do vaguely remember that we did do that. Chris says, Make him draw. Okay. Neil says, good, interesting tutorial. Thank you. All right, nice one, Neil. Glad that seemed useful. Okay, we've got A-Class Catamaran Lowrider Exploder AD3 on board. Hey, Joe, best greetings from Berlin. Look forward to sailing at Downwind in September. All the best stuff. Look forward to seeing you here. All right, we've got Hung, probably winning it in the handle stakes there. Who says, sail shape, I've successfully added a jib to my Minicat guppy and I'm zooming. Yeah. Yeah, on the Minicats, you may have seen I've been Minicat sailing myself. And I know for some of you, and I know this, that for some of you, you feel that the Minicat is not what we should be focusing on Joyrider TV. We're not focusing on it exclusively, but what we're doing is we're showing the whole of catamaran sailing. So the Minicat definitely at the kind of lower performance, easier, more user-friendly end of the scale, whereas the Nacra 20 FCS very much at the other end of the scale, strap in and hope for the best. So yeah, I'm very much into promoting the whole range of every stage of catamaran sailing, not just the Hobie. I know a lot of Hobie 16 lovers out there. Me too. Be back on the 16 this week. But yes, I've been Minicat sailing at the weekend. The Minicat is obviously going to be a lot slower than a conventional fiberglass boat. It was an absolutely brilliant day out. Absolutely amazing. And it really was, for me, putting the boat through its paces the most that I have done. And I just thought the whole thing was so enjoyable, made more so that the fact that the boat did hold together. And, you know, when going over these big waves and slamming down repeatedly for an hour, it's like, ooh, is something going to give up at some point? No, it didn't. But yes, all right. So Hung Like Tic Tacs also continues. This sail shape stuff you're referring to also applies to my boat. Yes, I'm definitely noticed the top of the sail curves out like I'm going downwind while I haven't tensioned it as I can get. Yeah, as Chris says, actually, this does all this theory applies to all boats. It's the same thing. If we downhaul it or we bring the center of effort further down, you will notice a bigger difference. Like, for example, on an A-class with a very flexible carbon mast, you're going to notice a much bigger change in sail shape than you would on a Minicat with a 3-piece aluminium mast, which perhaps doesn't bend quite so much. But by downhauling the boat as much as you can when it's windy, it really is going to make a difference. Okay. We've got AvGeek787 on board. Hello. Great to have you with us. Hanny in Amsterdam, channel member, is on board. Looking forward to seeing you soon and sail at Wildwind tomorrow. What a great time to be coming to Greece tomorrow. It's always the best time is tomorrow. Doesn't matter when it is, but if it's tomorrow, that is the best time. All right. Okay, Hung Like Tic Tacs continues. One idea I've been flirting with, I like this, I see where you're going, is taking the mast down on the Minicat and attaching a kite from kite surfing. Bad idea? I tell you what, I'll do some R&D for you, because if you didn't know, I'm also an enthusiastic kite surfer. and I've got the equipment to do something like that. So I think the main thing with that is the venue where you're going to do it. The reason I haven't done it yet is because Vasiliki Bay, where I usually sail, is not a very good place to do that, because firstly, there's a fair bit of traffic. Secondly, if it doesn't go so well and you end up going straight downwind, there's not a lot of escape on the cards. So definitely venue essential. All right. Philip. Hello, Philip, in Ireland, I believe. Great to have you with us. When are you next doing Show Us Your Cat? This is a question that I've heard. I'll get some video of the Hobie Pearl. I think this is the easiest big cat I've ever sailed. Yeah, nice. Yeah, I'm looking to get Show Us Your Cat back underway. I'm thinking kind of end of November, because I'll tell you why. Because it does take a tremendously long time to put an episode of Show Us Your Cat together. Even though you may think, oh, I've seen Show Us Your Cat, it looks like you threw that together in 20 minutes. No, it takes a long time. And during the summer, when there's loads of sailing going on and other stuff, there's always other stuff as well, as you'd know. There's not time to be sat in the studio putting together an episode of Show Us Your Cat when there is actual sailing that could be going on. So that is why it's going to, from this day forth, or from when I last did it, it's going to be just in the winter months, and there will only be an episode once I have enough cats to show to warrant an episode of Show Us Your Cat. So there we go. Jens is on board, channel member. Hi, Jens. Great to have you with us. Jens just in on the speed stick, hitting some big speeds on the C2. Very nice. We've got Epix One on board. Hello, Joe and chat. Yes, great to have you with us also. Okay, so back into the preloaded questions. So this next one comes from Rich. And Rich says, this is from the Nacra event on Lake Como. He said he noticed that on the downwind legs, I was playing the main sheet downwind with the kite up even more than Belgium. There was one race where we followed one of the top Belgium, the top Belgium team who actually finished, I think, second overall, who looked to be using it in a similar manner as Upwind, easing it in the gusts, bringing it in for the lulls. Is that what you're doing too? All this time, I thought we had to keep the main pinned in tight downwind to support the mast due to the kite. Yes, this is a fine question. So, yeah, what I'm doing with the main sheet on the downwind legs, when I'm really trying to eke as much speed as possible out of the rig, is, yes, in the gusts, it is, or if the wind was constantly really strong, then I would have the main sheet cranked in hard on the downwind leg to help support the mast so that we definitely don't lose the mast. But when the wind is a bit lighter, or if there's some holes in the wind, so if we're going to have to rub out this work of art that we've had going on here because we need a bit of space. Okay, so as we're coming downwind, we're going to experience variations in the wind strength. So if we get an increased amount, or actually let's talk about the actual, so if we've when we've put the spinnaker up initially, yes, I'm cranking the main in pretty tight. Just the objective here is to have the main sheet in tight before we really power up, just to make sure that we're well protected before we're really putting the power on. And then once the power's on, so we might have headed up a little bit, power is on, then I'll have the main in tight. I will take the occasional glance up at the leech telltales on the mainsail. So we're just going to have the back of the mainsail here. And we've got these leech telltales like this. And if I can see 3 out of the 4 leech telltales, then that means that the sail is in the sweet spot. It's not oversheeted. Because like what we were talking about earlier with the spinnaker being oversheeted downwind, it's the same for the mainsail. Now, if we're absolutely gunning it in a strong wind, absolutely cranking, and the boat is flying, then we are going to want to have the main sheet as tight as it will go, because any looser is just going to create drag because it's not in enough. But the reason I'm kind of playing the main sheet downwind is because if we're sailing along and we sail into an area of less wind, then 2 things are going to happen. One is we're going to slow down a bit. And the other thing is the amount of pressure that is actually in the mainsail is going to reduce. So if you think the mainsail is like this, looking down from above, when there's wind in the mainsail and there's pressure in it, that pressure is going to open the mainsail up, meaning that it's less effectively, it's opening the leech up a little bit, making it less likely to be oversheeted. But then if we sail into less wind, it's going to spring back more to this shape, which means it's very easy for the mainsail to become oversheeted, which is going to slow us down. So that, as well as the fact that the boat has slowed down, so the apparent wind might have changed a little bit. So if the boat slowed down, we should have changed course a bit as well, ideally, to keep that apparent wind the same. But that is why when the boat slows down, if we sail into less wind, I'm just going to ease an armful of mainsail just to make sure that we're not oversheeted. Like if we lose 2 more telltales, that is telling us that that part of the sail is really hooked, which means the telltale is getting blown directly down this way. So the wind is coming along here and it's going straight off the back like that. Whereas we want the, and on this side, it's kind of detaching. So we're not getting very good airflow off the leech of the mainsail. Whereas here, very good airflow both sides of the sail. That's what we're looking for. So in the lulls, sheeting out, just an armful is usually adequate unless you really are sailing in some very up and down wind. And then as the breeze comes back on, boat speed picks up, we'll crank it back in, which is going to give us that profile that we want for the stronger wind. So there we go. That is how it is. Okay, we've got Mr. Tony KP in Ebeltoft, Denmark on board. Hope everyone is having a great time. Hope everyone is revving up nicely for the weekend. Yeah, my weekend, I've got Chris and I think it's his dad coming for 5 days. 5 days of Hobie 16 coaching in Vasiliki Bay on board Bad Boy 95. That one. Yeah, looking forward to that. This is going to be very good. Champagne sailing for 5 days. Very nice. But I hope everyone else has got a nice weekend planned. We've got Scott dropping it in the slot. Great to have you with us, Scott. As always, hope that the weekend is looking good for you as well. Sunset Wingman is with us. First time sailing cat in over a year after shoulder surgery. Well, I hope that the shoulder is feeling good. It's about time. Yes. Well, have a great sail and listen to your body. My wife is a yoga teacher. I get told this sort of stuff. Okay, back to the preloaded. Okay, this one is from Daniel T. In response to the Minicat expedition video. If you haven't seen it, there was when I got to Paradise Island, I took the opportunity because the water was such a great color, nice and flat, and the wind was just starting to come up nicely, that I thought I would do a bit of showboating. And the showboating is filmed from outside the boat, but I didn't have a support crew or anything to do the filming. So what I used was this. Ta-da! Yes, this is a swimming pool noodle. And what I've got this, you see it's a very straight swimming pool noodle because it is on a carbon pole, and I've attached to the end of the carbon pole a GoPro mounting thingy, and it's the type of thingy which is perfect for the GoPro Max, which is the 360-degree camera. We've got a lens on both sides, which means it doesn't matter which way the pole is twisting, because when we're editing the 360 footage, we can always get it to point in the right direction. And it's worked so well. Yeah, of course, I did have to, on the other end of the pole, this line goes all the way up the pole to the mount at the top. So that gives us security. And this line I then attached to, for the expedition, I basically took with me a small sail bag, and then I filled it with rocks from the beach, tied it to the bottom of the pole, and then used that as a weight to hold it so that the pole sat the right way up. Works very nicely indeed. Yeah, it's very good. And the swimming pool noodle being yellow makes it a bit easier to spot from a distance as well. So there we go. Okay. Oh, and while we're on the topic, I just thought I'd give a shout out to wingcups.com, made in the USA. Apologies, I can't remember the name of who it was who sent me the wing cups, but it worked so well. So these are for boats which have got either wings, hence the name, like a Getaway or a Hobie 17 or something similar. And so this part goes onto the wing, and then with the Velcro, it just straps around. And for extra security, we had cable ties on there as well. And but you could put these on the sidebars of a Hobie 16, and it is a big cup that you put your cup into. And even in the big swells, in fact, it worked really well in the big swells, having them on the back beam, because the back beam, if you think about it, is the bit of the boat which is less slammy. It's more just tilty. So as you go up the wave, it tilts. And then as you come down, it just tilts the other way. Whereas if you had it on the front beam, it would be more bang, bang, because it's going bang like that. But very good. well worth a look. If you need somewhere to put your drink on your boat, I think this is the best solution that I've seen. Very nice. And yeah, great on the Minicat, I thought. Okay, so next, this is from Easy Leone, who says, any advice about adding a net forward of the front crossbeam to carry some gear? Okay, I have got some advice about that, but I'm not sure if you're going to like it. So here's our boat, and we're talking about somehow attaching a net here on which to put your provisions for a trip. I would say don't do it. That's I would just say don't do it. If you saw the video from Sam Holmes sailing, he's a yachtsman mostly, but he did a expedition with a Hobie 16 and he put a net between the bows and it didn't do well and it was a mess. And if you had this and you capsized, this would be a risk. If you capsized, boat goes upside down, this is somewhere else where you could get stuck. So for that reason alone, I would say don't do it. But I would also say don't do it because you don't want to, on a catamaran, be putting weight up at the front of the boat, up here. Because if there's any wind, then you're going to be nose diving a lot. And if you're nose diving, everything you've put on the net is going to be underwater a lot of the time. What I would be inclined to do would be to take like a sail bag or something similar and have that running across the boat. If you've got a lot of stuff across the boat, kind of just behind the mast, I think, because that is where the weight is going to be the most neutral. And on a lot of boats, that is where the boat has the most volume in the hulls. So it's not going to affect the trim so much, slow you down. And just make sure that it's really well tied on. And just, I think when you're packing your boat for a camping trip or for an expedition, just think, what if we capsize? What if we capsize? You need to make sure that if you capsize, all of your belongings aren't going to go floating off. That is going to add to the kind of this feeling of, oh, what are we going to do here? Everything is floating off. But if we have got a load of stuff strapped to the boat, one thing to consider is if we capsize, that weight strapped across here is going to make the boat invert more quickly. So just things to keep in mind. But attaching a net forwards of the front beam, I wouldn't do it. If you definitely wanted to do it, you'd of course have to get the right size net. You want to have, for anything like this, like I've kind of drawn on here, it doesn't want to be a square, like a perfect square. You want to have curved edges like this, with multiple places for a line to go through, and then you tension this way and this way on both sides. And then that means because the edges are curved, it means you get tight edges. Whereas if it's square and you tension like that, then the edges will kind of roll and not be as satisfactory. So curved edges and lines running down the edges like that, so that you could tie this corner to, if let's say if it was a Hobie 16, this corner you could tie to the pylon, this you could tie to the bow tang, and the same on this side, and just really get as much tension on there as possible. There we go. All right. Next preloaded question. This is from UKB Goldie, who says on this is back to, I would think, the Tornado Worlds, light wind. On some downwind runs, the helm and the crew are both very well forward on the boat, with your crew on the leeward side and lifting the hull. It looks like the leeward bow is digging in quite a bit, and I would think this extra drag would slow you down. Wouldn't it be better to move slightly aft to keep the boat more flat? What is the rationale for being so far forwards when going downwind? All right, so the main... When the wind is light, on the downwind leg, we do want to get the bow down a little bit more. Now, the reason that we're doing that is because if we look at the profile of the hull, the front of the hull has got this kind of long, narrow, knife-like profile, whereas the back of the hull is very wide, and the wide section of the hull at the back will create more drag because it's wider, rather than the knife-like section, which is going to dig in more. By having it dig in more, it's also going to give us more lift, which is going to help us to lift the hull more in less wind, because with, you know, on the Tornado especially, we've only got these tiny little centerboards, so we really need to dig the hull in to help to stop the boat from sliding sideways and to encourage getting the hull to lift in less wind. If we went further back, then we'd be putting more of this rounded section of hull in the water, which is going to create more drag. And because it's so rounded, less knifey, it's not going to dig in. It's not going to help us to lift the hull quite as much. The other thing with the trim on the boat is you can kind of hear if your trim is too far back, because if your trim is too far back, what you're doing is you're putting too much of the rudder in the water. And if the water is actually running past the top of the, you know, the top of the transom, then your rudder stock is going to start running through the water, and that is going to create a tremendous amount of drag. So it's definitely a thing to get the weight forwards, especially downwind. Now, upwind, we're not doing this as much because on the upwind, to give us more lift, we want to have an equal amount of centerboard and rudder in the water to give us that lift upwind. We're getting a lot of lift from the rudder blades. I'd just like to say thanks very much to Philip for getting in there with a super sticker. The super sticker, by the way, is what is keeping the live Q&A ad-free. Nobody wants those ads. In fact, I know who wants those ads. Google. They want the ads, but you don't want the ads. So the super sticker is keeping the live Q&A ad-free. Thanks very much to Philip for #1 fan. Great stuff for getting the ball rolling there. Yeah, so on the upwind, we do want more rudder blade in the water to help to prevent leeway and to give us more lift. But on the downwind, we can get the lift from the front section of the hull, which is going to help to fly the hull more. It's going to dig in, and that is the way to get the best speed. Of course, you can go too far, and if the water's going more than halfway up the bow, then that would be seen as too far. But yeah, up to about halfway is the sweet spot for the trim on the Downwind. So there we go. All right, so that is all that we have got at this time. So in fact, seeing as you've made it to the end, or nearly to the end, I'm just going to float an idea by you. Last year, I ran a raffle, no less, where the prize in the raffle was a holiday for 2 people at Wildwind Sailing Holidays. So that is a whole week of champagne sailing here on the Greek island, using all of the boats that Wildwind have to offer, from the little Optimist all the way to the mighty 49er, and then in the catamarans from the slightly bigger Dragoon all the way to the Tornado. All of these boats are at your disposal. Will anybody be interested in, we'll do a rerun of that. So if you haven't got much on in September and you win, you could be out here in a couple of weeks. But otherwise, you could just pick the time when you want to come next year. Shall we go for this? I'm thinking I'm going to go for it. So I'm going to go for it. Unless say, no, this is a terrible idea. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. Thanks for coming with me on this journey of catamaran sailing goodness that we have been talking about here. Hope you all have a great weekend, and I'll see you soon with some more on Joyrider TV. Thanks very much.